So let's say something like Aadhaar, like the data is created. Everybody is interested in data, not just the state, but also the corporates, right? So that's where the gray zone sort of manifests very clearly. So these are, so I'm just going to talk about a few of these in bit of a detail. So social media identity, of course, your Facebook identity, right? When you create a Facebook page or a profile, you have a certain identity. LinkedIn, Twitter, your blogging, you have your own blog post. When you have, contribute in crowdsourcing platforms, right? So all these would be a social media identity. Financial identity would be, let's say, when you pay through Paytm, when you're paying for your Uber through Paytm, right? So that's a financial identity. Now that's a very, when you pay for Uber through Paytm, the Uber is your travel identity, right? So all these identities exist in itself, but they're related. They're not in isolation, right? But they exist as a strip of your identity. That's why we are calling them identities. So now you have multiple strips of your identity in the digital space by the way you consuming the data on a daily basis, right? So now if I look at these key players who are coming into these identities, so they are not just interested. So let's say why they are running these algorithms, right? And this whole connected device that we are talking about. So Uber is just not interested in my travel identity. They are interested to understand how my travel identity connects to my financial identity, and it also connects to my demographic identity, right? So that's where the profit lies. That's where the insight lies. So I am not interested just for what purpose you are coming to my platform. I am trying to understand what else you do and how I can improve your experience on my platform by understanding what else you do in this digital space, right? So this is the connection that both the corporates or both the motivations that I am talking about are interested in. And you are able to understand how this and why are they interested, because technically speaking we have reached that stage where we are able to draw these insights, we are able to make these connections, and this is how we are drawing insights from that. That's the first part of the session that we were talking about, right? How these connections are built, how these connections are technically enabled right now, right? So this is the reason how this makes both profit making and policy making bodies interested in the data. So they are not just interested in one part of your identity, they are interested in making these connections. So here I am going to introduce two concepts. One is data mobility. So data mobility basically means when you have a contained flow, movement of the data. So let's say when I am linking my Aadhaar to my bank account, to my phone number, or to my subsidy, my PDS card, right? So I know the way the government or the state is making these connections about me, right? So this is a sort of a structured movement of the data. So they are relational, the links are made, but you sort of have a sense how the relations are made. Now and both the corporates and the state, both the profit and the policy sides are interested in this data mobility, right? That's what we just described in the previous slide. Now here I want to introduce this concept, data motility. Motility is basically in English means autonomous movement. It's a self-directed movement. So the data moves on its own, right? And why to think about identity, we need to understand this concept of self-directed autonomous movement of data, because when you are creating this data, when you are generating and consuming data in the digital space, you do not know how these are going to be linked. That trajectory is not clear to you at the moment. with machine learning algorithms, that trajectory will manifest itself that you are not aware of and you cannot predict, right? And what sort of insights will be drawn from this kind of data motility, this autonomous movement of the data, and what algorithms, because algorithms, as Shisha was talking about, is mostly proprietary. It's a black box, nobody knows, right? So let's just think that if your data is moving without you knowing in the directions it is moving, and you have proprietary algorithms which are pretty much black boxed, you don't know which identity of yours is going to be created. So that's why I am moving from this concept of data subject to digital human. So a digital human who has multiple identities, but the human itself does not have any idea how these identities sort of connect to each other or will connect to each other, right? And this is where your question, what are the political implications, right? Yes, you have a question?
Yeah, just to clarify, so are we saying that what you don't really have control over or knowledge of is the kind of things that are being inferred about you? If we say that the algorithm is trying to draw certain conclusions about who you are and either demographically or in terms of tastes and preferences, that what's unknown to you and that's outside of your control is just knowing the kind, the conclusions that it's drawing.
It's both. So you don't know what relation. So if I go back to this, or we can just stay in this slide. So we see that there are connections which are being made, right? So let's say your health identity is sort of connected to your demographic identity, and it is also connected to your finance data, right? So when you are doing that in a contained environment, right, you know how these connections are made. So let's say if you go and fill up a form, you know what all information you are giving, right? Because your objective is to give information here when you are filling up a form. When you are opening a Facebook account, you know what all information you have given to Facebook, right? Facebook does not ask for your real age. You can just write anything. I can write my age as born in somewhere else, right? So what I'm saying, so you have certain sense of, okay, I have some data about my health out there, I have some data about my demographics, I have some data about my finance out there, right? And you can sort of the experience, the recommendation systems, the way it operates, you have some sense of the way they are kind of connected, right? So you book a flight on Google, from the next, you go to Facebook, you suddenly see all the travel sites are on the right hand side of your Facebook feed, right? So you have a sense that this is the way it is connected. Now this is the connection part. Now if you add on the insight part that we looked at in the previous slides, right, that the kind of insights that our analytical tools are able to generate on the volume of the volume of the data that they are able to mine at the moment, that insight is something you don't know, right? So of course there can be different connections which will be made. So both are beyond your understanding at the moment, that what connections would be made, and on the basis of that connection what insights will be drawn. This too something I am talking about as motility, because it is autonomous. The data itself, and as we are talking about, if you are moving to an artificial intelligence platform when humans are not doing it anymore. So you have just created the algorithms and left it there, right? So algorithms is doing it by itself. So what connections these algorithms can create and what insights they can draw, you will not know.
But in a sense, from my perspective, it's irrelevant whether it's an algorithm or a human making those.
Yes, it is irrelevant. It is irrelevant, but it is relevant for you to understand that when you move this to an algorithm which is black box, let's say if I know, if you know, let's say you are my regular students and I am going to grade you at the end of the course, right? If you are not happy, if you think I am discriminating against you, you can always come back and ask me what is the criteria of evaluation, right? And I have to tell you. Now you cannot, if the algorithm, if my criteria of evaluating you is black boxed, you cannot challenge me. So it doesn't matter whether I am a human or I am an algorithm.
So in a way you're making an organization point, right? Like there's a certain inbuilt like opacity to the system, right?
Yes. So what we are trying to say here, I think what would be something for you to extrapolate from here, that of course humans were making discretions. These decisions were made by humans, these insights were drawn by humans. So there are biases that were with the human. Now when we are moving to the algorithm, that's what Shisha was talking about, algorithmic biases, right. So you are definitely embedding your algorithms with similar or more biases or less biases. But the point is, the moment you move it onto an algorithm, you cannot challenge it anymore because they are black box. I cannot challenge you on something that I don't know if you have done it.
Yeah, my only point is that organizations have behaved like this forever.
Yes, but the so what we need to understand, the implications of putting it into an algorithm. So first of all, you cannot challenge, and secondly what happens, I think this is also his talk touched upon, is that the moment you move this insight generation, the responsibility of insight generation onto a algorithm, it's immediately acquire an objective status that humans never could achieve, right. So you could always say, nobody discriminated against you, it's the computer which is telling me, right. So that is the implication which makes it, of course the logic is same as you are saying, but the implications are different because they are different, right. Materially they are different, hence their social implications are different, right. Okay. Now coming back, putting things into perspective. So okay, if I go back to this, just to summarize what I am saying, there are of course this part we have described so far, that how data moves from consumption, from production to the consumption, which is sort of a own parameter, how do you say, its own box, right. It is a box within which it moves, and it runs through the algorithms, and then it creates new data, and then you are consuming and generating further data. That is pretty much the loop. The data motility is the autonomous movement of the data, and that is something which also the implications that we need to understand in terms of when not just profit making organization, when state have all these data. So let us say first one that we have so far talked about, that people having access to our data and also people generating insights from our data. What is the implications for this for privacy? People having access to my personal data, and the other one is surveillance, that if they are able to make such connections, what does it mean, can we create a surveillance state out of this whole process, right. If we are looking at data motility, what we are saying that what sort of identities are going to be created, right, that is becoming fluid, we do not know, right. So which part of your data will be connected? Let us say if you connect my religion, my gender and my consumption pattern, and then you draw insights, these are the people who are supposed to be more rebellious, right, or these are the people who are supposed to be more anti-establishment, right, because of these data strips that exist there. So that has implications for both privacy and surveillance. Now for motility, what are the implications? That is something we do not know yet, right, because we cannot predict. So one of the things that I am touching upon here, that it is making this identity that we have very fuzzy, it is fluid and fuzzy. We do not know in what form we may appear to either the corporates or the state, right. Now putting things in perspective, what is identity? Do not look at the slides, what is identity?
Completely put it down into two. One is something which I do, which I have of myself, and what the other people around me perceives of me. So these are the two basics of what is an identity, and within that frame, like how others are perceiving and how in relation to the society my identity is working, it can keep on differentiating depending upon the socio-economic, political or any kind of a space that I'm belonging to. Like for example, right now I can be a student and outside I can be just someone belonging to a privileged background who owns a car or something like that. So depending upon the space, my identity keeps on shifting from one position to
Another. Yes. So, thanks for this precise answer. So, identity has two vectors, one is the self and the other is the society, right? And how these two are connected at different point in time, depending on that you change your identity or you use different kinds of identity, right? So, why I use the word use is that's the second point, right? Identity is always a performance, right? You perform your identity to others. So, when these others change, you use different identities, right? And you decide depending on who the others you are performing it to, you change which role you are going to take, right. So, sometimes I put my gender identity forward, sometimes I would put my parental identity forward, sometimes I will put my religious identity forward, right, and sometimes I will also put them in combinations. So, it is not that it is there purely like the gender or purely my class. There is of course cross cutting notions of identity. Now, the first point that I wrote here is that identity as a product of modernity. Some of you might know what I mean by modernity, but some of you might not. So, here I want to just very simple, just the way I try to simplify relational database management for social science people, I am trying to simplify what modernity and identity I mean by people who do not have a social science background. What I mean by modernity is with the advent of industrial revolutions and enlightenment that takes place in Europe in 500 years back, there is a certain kind of social fabric that emerged, right. Before that, societies which were of a certain kind had a very strong sense of community. So, as you change, as modernization takes place, industrialization takes place, these fabrics are sort of loosening, right. And when it does, you need different kinds of line to carve a sense of belonging for you, right, because you do not belong to a very small community where everybody knows everybody. You are endlessly mobile, right, and as you become endlessly mobile, this people that you are talking to, this other you are performing yourself to, you are presenting yourself to changes, right, they are not uniform. In a single day, this group of people that you are performing to changes already maybe for me 4 or 5 times, right. And depending on these 4 or 5 times of the people that I am talking to, I change my identity. When I am traveling in a BMTC bus, I use my gender identity, I go and I use the ladies seat, right. I do not think about it. Maybe when I walk into this classroom, I do not think so much about my gender identity. Maybe my professional identity sort of takes over depending on the crowd that I am talking to, right. So, this is what I mean by identity as a product of modernity. So, if you think of our modern lives, it is extremely complex and it is extremely heterogeneous. So, this heterogeneity makes us look for an identity, and then identity itself becomes a performance in itself, which you play out depending on who your audience is. Now, is identity then a private matter or a public concern? Both, right. So, if I look at it in this way, that it is a relationship between the individual and society which will keep changing, and I am talking about changing in a day, right, and they exist all at the same time. It is just what you perform changes. So, if that changes, so it is my responsibility to decide which identity I am going to put forward, but the authority is not completely on me. Now, just wrapping up this slide quickly is we are looking at how the social fabrics changing makes us rely more on identity as a surrogate for community, that your sense of community is very broad now, it is not homogeneous anymore, and hence you need to rely more on identity. But identity in itself, it's a performative artifact. So, depending on who is your audience, you have to wear multiple hats, so multiple identities or different identities at the different times. And that makes this complex relationship between the self and the society makes identity not only your responsibility, but it's also you don't have the competence to authenticate your own identity. That becomes a public concern, right. So, that is why we have all these massive ID projects where state is trying to say that one person cannot do identity theft, identity fraud, all these things we need to stop, because people are trying to create identities that they do not have, right. So, they are performing different roles that we want to stop, which is beyond the script if you look at it as a performance. Now, coming back to what I said yesterday, right, that how does this data, identity and everyday sort of fits into this. So, what I tried to do first, try to look at how material aspect of data makes possible things that we are doing now, right, and all the buzzwords that we are operating with. So, of course, the buzzwords is something that only the people who are the programmers or the people who are on the design side need to be worried about, but what you need to understand that the social implications that it has and how you are also part of that material environment that is being created, right. So, you as a data subject is producing and consuming this data in a certain way that makes this whole flow of or the mobility or the motility of the data that we talked about possible. And the implications of this material aspects of data on your social life, which we looked at through the lens of identity, right. How it sort of makes, so as it is as a product of modernity, we were wearing multiple identities that we are operating or performing. Now, in the digital space, it becomes even more fluid, right. First, it is fluid, and secondly, what we are not sure how our identities are going to be formed and what forms it is going to take, right. And this is happening, this entire process is taking place on this y axis, that you are moving, that is what I said, the territorialization to deterritorialization basically means that you are destabilizing your network, the spatially and temporally they are much more fragile, they are much more distributed, they are much more heterogeneous, right. And because of this process, what happens, the relationship between the material and the social has become lot more complex, when you cannot say that you are not part of the material world or the material world is not part of your social world, right. And the entire framework I try to look at through the notion of identity and how digital identity is making this entire thing manifest in a certain way, right. So, that is pretty much my presentation, and the conclusion that I just wanted to, have you guys read this novel called White Noise? So, White Noise has this famous quote that you are the sum total of your data. So, if you do not have enough data about you, your identity is sort of incomplete in the digital space, right. And so, one of my friend forwarded me this WhatsApp video which I could not find. I thought I will plug it in, is that the video is about a girl who started dating a guy and they just know each other for a week, and that guy does not have any digital identity. So, he does not have any social media profile, he does not have Google ID or something of that sort. So, so the girl really freaked out because she could not stalk him on the digital space at all. She could not find any information about the guy she is dating. So, she went and talked to her friends, and her friends said, "Are you sure you are dating a human being, or is it a ghost? Maybe we should figure that out." So, that somehow sort of sum up, I thought, on a lighter note, that do we even exist if we do not exist on the digital space anymore? So, are we headed towards that sort of an experience? So, I will just end with that. Thank you for patiently listening to a very long morning lecture.